talk about the Central Vista project. This project has been initiated by the current ruling dispensation, which costs around 13 to 20,000 crore. Now you can just imagine, I'm not really good at math, so I can't really calculate how many zeros are added to 20,000, even I have no clue about it. But nonetheless, my common sense tells me that it's way too much. Okay, and this money could be utilized in a more rational way instead of building something that is completely unnecessary. Just mark this word unnecessary, and I will explain it to you in the next few minutes what I mean by that. Okay, so the Central Vista is initiated by the current ruling dispensation, and just not quite too long ago, a minister from the BJP, I suppose his name is Harshdeep Puri, said that it is somewhat necessary. So I'm not quite sure how the BJP says it, but as far as I'm concerned, I really can't make sense out of that. I mean, people use these words called necessary, possible, contingent, impossible. I'm not quite sure how lay people use it, people with no philosophical background, or both formal and informal, or with no understanding of modal logic. So these people use it however they want. So in this video, I shall attempt to somehow reduce that redundancy. Why I call that as a redundancy? Because it is somewhat flawed. So in philosophy, we don't use stereotypical words as, we call it redundancy. So in this video, my primary aim shall be to reduce that redundancy. So let's talk a little about possible worlds and modal logic. So what is modal logic? Modal logic is a system of logic that deals with propositions that behave modally. In other words, it deals with the modal behaviors. That is to say, a proposition a certain time asserts modality such as contingency, necessity, possibility and impossibility. In the same way, possible worlds are state of affairs, or the worlds where things could have been a bit differently. In other words, say for example, right now there could have been a possible world where I would not have been recording this video. There could have been a possible world where I might not have been wearing this pink t-shirt, or maybe something else. So possible worlds are worlds where things could have been a bit differently, or differently in a total sense. So that's what we call as possible worlds, or rather philosophers call as possible worlds, in order to test a philosophical idea concerning its necessity, contingency and the other words which I mentioned. So I'm going to explain to you what possible propositions, impossible, contingent and necessary propositions are. So one example of necessary proposition would be, if I say 2 plus 2 is equals 4, in other words, what I mean is you bring 2 glasses of water and other 2 glasses of water, you're bound to get 4 glasses of water. There's no way you can get 6 or 7 or any other number of glasses of water. So 2 plus 2 cannot fail to be 4. It has to be 4, it ought to be 4. So that's what it means to be necessarily the case. So one example of impossible proposition would be, if I say me and my sister cannot be taller than each other in the same time, right? Either she is taller than me or I am taller than her, but in the same time that cannot be the case. So one example of contingent proposition would be, I exist, that's true of me, but it's not necessary that I exist. What do I mean by that is, in 1997, if my parents had not met, then I would not be here, I would not have existed, right? I exist, it's true, but it's just contingently true and not necessarily true. I could not have existed. If there was any possibility of me not existing, then it's not a necessary fact. So one example of possible proposition. So an example of possible proposition would be, once I'm done with this video, I might go outside or maybe go into my room, and while going I might slip in the staircase. So it's possible. So there is no possible world where it is impossible that I will not slip. The possibilities are always open. So these are the few examples of modal logic and possible world semantics. So now going back to our original claim about the necessity of the Central Vista project. Now, as I had explained earlier about the possible world semantics, apply those same principles to the Central Vista project. Now, there could have been a possible world where this is not necessary, right? I mean, from 13,000 crore rupees to 20,000 crore rupees is not just a small amount that we get from our parents to eat chips. That's way too expensive. In the times of pandemic, when people are dying, due to lack of oxygen, due to lack of vaccines, due to lack of look at the education system of our country. It's so flawed. Okay, there's no good university, there's no schools. Okay, look at the railway station. We live in cities like Bangalore. It's one of the is one of the thriving metropolis, but look at other states where things are not yet developed. Look at the railway stations. It's all just crushed. So there are a lot of things that the government needs to focus as of now, apart from just making the new parliament building and the central avenue. So there could have been a possible world where this is not necessary, and if there was some possible world where it is not necessary, then it is possible that in the actual world it is not necessary. If there is a possible world where the Central Vista project is not necessary, possibilities are always open. So if it's possible that in some possible world the Central Vista is not necessary, then it is possible that in the actual world it's not necessary, right? So somehow the Central Vista project is not necessary. It is just contingently true. So they're building it based on their ego. Call it whatever you want, but my intention to make this video was to tell you that it is somehow not necessary, right? It could have failed in some possible world to hold the title of necessity.